consultants, these are the people who makes things easy for us by identifying the threat in the community, because they are practicing in the community all the time, in touch with the patients all the time, and then pointing out that, they're raising the alarm that this is going to happen. So I remember from 2011 as well, when Tariq Mia Saab highlighted this, that there are many patients coming with fever, and Professor Faisal Masood was at that time principal of SIMS, Services Institute of Medical Sciences, and then he took up this challenge of not only diagnosing these patients but forming what dengue is, and the year was 2011. So if you remember, 2011 Lahore, which is known as the city of gardens, all the gardens of Lahore, they became deserted. The city of fountains, where there was hustle and bustle all over, all the water bodies were dried. And the hospitals, which were catering to a large number of patients of multiple ailments, at that time turned into hospitals covered with blue nets. And this was the state of affairs in major hospitals of Lahore, where this alien force came and attacked this part of the country. This is the Services Hospital on your right. This is a long queue of patients waiting outside the emergency to get themselves checked by a CBC because they had fever. This is the emergency counter of Mayo Hospital, Lahore. You can see a lot of patients gathered around the counter on which you register just to get entry into the emergency room. This is the waiting area, which is also full of the patients as well as attendants who had panicked because there were cases of dengue in their home. And this was the state of hospital where I work, where all the beds were converted into dengue beds. All the wards, whether they were medical, surgical or allied specialities, they fell short of the number of the beds to accommodate a large number of patients which were coming with complaints of high-grade fever and decreased cell counts. And the media at that time was showing the number of patients as well as death toll like figures of a cricket match. This was the headline of all the news channels, print media and social media, that there is a new virus and it is hitting Pakistan badly. The dengue epidemic of 2011 is the world's worst epidemic reported so far. In a short span of 73 days, 600,000 patients were suspected of dengue, and we had 22,000 lab confirmed patients, and we lost 375 precious lives to this virus. It was a very sad state of affairs. There was a chaos all around in the health sector because we had no previous experience of coping the outbreak of a disease, and that too of a disease which was not known to us. And all our efforts were based on either mosquito control or getting the platelet kits, because that is all we knew, that this is a viral disease spread by mosquito, and this is a disease in which the platelets fall and patient starts bleeding, so you need to build up platelets. But this is when science emerged in the form of Dengue Expert Advisory Group. I'm very proud to be part of it and mentee of Professor Faisal Masood, who formed this group in 2011 and headed it for a period of 8 years. I've been given the responsibility for the last 2 years to take this forum forwards, and I just pray to Almighty Allah that we will be able to cut down the number of dengue patients in our country with the efforts that we do day in and day out by forming guidelines, algorithms, and teaching and training of our physicians and paramedical staff to treat the dengue patients. But if I talk about the current scenario, we know that there is no specific drug which is available to treat dengue, and the effective vector control measures are unsustainable and elusive. The measures are largely reactive. Whenever we see mosquito, we start spraying. We do not know if there is insecticide resistance, whether we can bring down the number of larvae or mosquitoes, how effectively we can do that. So it's not only the vector control which is involved in curbing this disease. There's a lot more, Samriti. There's a lot more which involves a multidisciplinary approach, particularly the community engagement, the environmental management, the epidemiological surveillance, and then comes the role of us, the physicians, to lab diagnose these patients and then clinically manage these patients. So in the next couple of few minutes, I'm going to tell you about dengue infection. I'm going to give you an overview and what a family physician or a physician practicing in the community setup should know about dengue. I will not be going into the details of in-hospital management, that will be covered partly by Dr. Maimuna. And you all know that dengue is a viral disease. It is an infectious tropical disease which is caused by a virus, and there is a vector involved in the transmission of the disease. The vector is a mosquito, and the mosquito belongs to the Aedes variety of family. This Aedes mosquito have multiple different types, but there are two types of Aedes mosquito which are mainly responsible for transmission of disease. And these are Aedes aegypti and Aedes albopictus. If you look at Aedes aegypti, it is a mosquito which is a peculiar looking mosquito with white spots on its legs and thorax. Same is the case with albopictus, which has white spots. These Aedes aegypti and Aedes albopictus are present in abundance in our environment. And if they are infected with the virus, they are responsible for carrying of disease and transmission of the disease. The virus which they carry are multiple. They also carry Japanese encephalitis virus, they carry yellow fever, West Nile virus, chikungunya, Zika virus. But one virus which is bothering us and kept on bothering us for the last 10 years is the dengue virus. The dengue virus belongs to the Flaviviridae family. It has 4 different serotypes, then 1, then 2, then 3, and then 4. It is a positive sense RNA virus which is enveloped, and it has got different proteins in its structure. There are 3 structural proteins and there are 7 non-structural proteins. I'm telling you about the proteins because one of the proteins, which is actually the part of virus, we can identify in the blood and helps us in making the diagnosis. So we will be talking about this protein later on. So the Aedes mosquito female, they bite. The male mosquitoes do not bite, they feed on the plant nectar. But the Aedes female mosquito bites humans because it requires blood to form eggs, and it derives proteins from the blood. And on an average, a female Aedes mosquito, it lays about 300 eggs in its lifespan. And the lifespan is about 2 to 3 weeks. So you can imagine a number of mosquitoes which are produced from one single infected mosquito and how rapidly the disease can transmit. Taking you back to your school days when we used to learn about the cycle of mosquito, how it grows, we all know that there are 2 phases. One is in water, which is the aquatic phase, and the other one is the terrestrial phase. The female Aedes mosquito lays eggs in water, and in water they become larvae and pupa, and then the adult mosquitoes, they fly away. So if the temperature is conducive, there is humidity, this is the perfect time for the mosquitoes to start increasing their generation and proliferating. So the mosquitoes, they have a shorter life cycle, so they quickly come out from their eggs, hatch from their eggs during this period which we are experiencing right now, which is moderate temperature, not very high, not very cold, and humidity. So this is when 5 to 7 days are required for a mosquito to come out of eggs. But if there are extremes of temperature, and particularly in the subsequent months when it will be cold, the life cycle will not stop. It will be prolonged, so it will take more time, about 2 to 3 weeks to come out of these eggs. And this infected mosquito, how does it become infected? This is the question. So it becomes infected by biting humans who are infected with the virus. So if you are carrying the virus in your blood and a mosquito bites you, then with the bite of the mosquito, the virus enters the mosquito, and there is an extrinsic incubation period in the mosquito. and then the mosquito becomes infected and is capable of transmitting this virus to other humans. So if now this infected mosquito bites a healthy person, it injects the virus into that healthy person with the bite, and then the virus, after completing its incubation period, shows signs and symptoms of the disease. So this is how the cycle continues. Usually people say that this virus comes in clusters. So in family, if you have a husband infected, wife also becomes infected, and then children and parents and neighborhood. This is because the mosquito is also living in the same environment in which you are living. So it's become a resident of your house. And when you eliminate that mosquito from your environment, only then you can stop the transmission in your disease in your house. So it is very important for all of us that we look around in our house, in our surroundings, for all the possible breeding sites of the mosquitoes and eliminate them, especially before the monsoon period. Coming on to the clinical case definition of dengue fever, there are 3 types of patients that we label, and we have developed that system after a very long exercise of brainstorming in the past few years. This is a suspected, probable and a confirmed case definition for dengue fever, and I would like that all of you remember this case definitions when you go out of this classroom, because this is the basis of the whole dengue system which is in place. So you suspect a patient if he is suffering from fever, and fever should be of short duration. It is an acute febrile illness, and when I say it's an acute febrile illness, acute stands for short duration. So the fever has to be less than 10 days. A fever of 3 weeks or a month usually is not dengue and we exclude it. Then febrile illness. So fever is an essential criteria. Patient should have fever or history of fever in the recent 2-3 days if you want to suspect a patient of a dengue infection. Along with fever, there should be any 2 other signs and symptoms. If we start from above, headache, retroorbital pain, myalgias, arthralgias, rash, bleeding manifestations from any side. It could be from gums, from nose, from GI. In females, there can be menorrhagia, there can be skin bruising, bleeding from any side. Abdominal pain, nausea and vomiting. Decreased urinary output despite taking adequate amount of fluids. And in very small children who cannot express themselves or tell what is happening to them, irritability without a cause or unable to take oral feed. This is the index of suspicion should be high in such patients. So fever with any 2 of these things, you must label that patient as a suspect case of dengue infection, particularly during this period of monsoon when the dengue is very active. When these patients who are suspect cases, they have a supportive lab evidence of thrombocytopenia and leukopenia, we consider them as a probable case. And there are different cutoff values of thrombocytopenia and leukopenia in different guidelines world over. If I talk about World Health Organization guidelines, they talk about a TLC of less than 5,000 and a platelet count of less than 150,000 per year. But just to minimize the load on the healthcare facilities, we brought it down with the consensus of the experts to less than 4,000 for TLC and less than 100,000 of platelet count to label a patient as a probable case of dengue infection. If a probable case comes to you, that means he has a clinical evidence, clinical criteria has been fulfilled, fever with any 2 symptoms, and there is a supportive lab evidence of thrombocytopenia and leukopenia, then this probable case must undergo confirmatory tests to know the actual diagnosis of the patient. And the confirmatory tests which we offer, they are very important from the point of view that they are different in different phases of the illness. So when the patient comes to you in the initial phase of fever, this is the phase in which the virus is applicating and active in your body. So you can either detect a virus or a part of virus in your blood. So The virus is detected by PCR, and the part of virus which I told you in the beginning, there were 7 non-structural proteins. One non-structural protein we can identify, which is NS1. So NS1 antigen, presence of NS1 antigen in blood, or PCR of dengue virus. This is confirmatory evidence of a dengue infection. Now, if the patient comes to you after 5 or 6 days, this is the phase when the virus is being cleared out of the body and your body's immune response is building up. And the immune response is in the form of antibody production. The first acute phase reactant antibody is the IgM antibody. So if the patient comes to you with the settling of the fever, passing initial 4-5 days, and you get an NS1 of this patient, this is going to be a useless exercise. So you need to identify which test has to be ordered in which part of the or which phase of the illness. So initial febrile phase is the phase of viremia. It starts 2 days prior to the onset of symptoms till the patient is febrile, and this is the time to check for either virus or NS1 antigen. PCR is an expensive test, it's a costly test, it is not readily available in all the lab setups, so we have help from NS1 antigen. But remember, this NS1 antigen has to be done by an ELISA method, not by a kit method, because kit methods are not reliable, they're not approved by WHO and not approved by Dengue Expert Advisory Group and Government of Punjab. So if you have smaller setups of lab in your clinics, I would advise all of you not to use kits, but refer these patients to bigger labs to check these tests via ELISA method. And then if IgM is either positive in symptomatic probable cases or NS1 or PCR is positive, this is a confirmatory evidence of dengue. Now most of the dengue patients, they are of mild illness, or which we call as simple dengue fever. It's like any other viral illness which gets better in a period of 2 weeks to 20 days, and the patient is all set to go good. And you don't need to do anything special for that patient. But small minority of the patients go into the serious form of the disease, which is known as severe dengue or dengue hemorrhagic. Now when we look at the term dengue hemorrhagic fever, it appears as if there is hemorrhage or bleeding, which is the differentiating point between DF, dengue fever, and dengue hemorrhagic fever, DHF. But actually, it is not the hemorrhage or bleeding which differentiates milder form of dengue from severe dengue. It is an intermediate phase of plasma leakage, which occurs due to a pathological mechanism which is very specific to dengue, which is hallmark of dengue. And this happens when in secondary infection, I told you in the beginning that the dengue has 4 serotypes. So if one serotype virus enters your body and body recognizes it as an alien host, it builds an immune response against it and you are protected for a very long time, lifelong immunity is produced. But if there is a change in the serotype, in the secondary infection, next time when you are hit by a virus, if there is a change in the serotype from the previous infection that you got, there are chances, not in all, but some patients, there are chances that instead of body forming and neutralizing antibodies, the body will form non-neutralizing antibodies. And these non-neutralizing antibodies, they worsen the condition of the patients because they act on the vascular endothelium and your endothelial cells become weak. So the plasma leaks out of the vessels and collects into your third spaces. This compromises your circulatory volume, and when your circulatory volume is compromised, then this affects your organs and leads to organ dysfunction and shock. So in a small minority of patients with a different serotype in a secondary infection, there are chances of development of non-neutralizing antibodies which lead to a cytokine storm in the body. And different cytokines, interleukins, TNF, they are released into the blood which act on your vascular endothelium and makes it leaky. And this leakiness causes the fluid plasma to come out of the vessels and collect in third spaces, compromising your circulatory volume, which can then lead to organ dysfunction. So this is the mechanism behind DHF, this critical phase of plasma leakage. And if this plasma leakage is so severe that there is circulatory compromise, then the patient will exhibit signs of shock, which is rapid and weak, feeble pulse, tachycardia, narrowing of the pulse pressure, which is a difference between your systolic and diastolic blood pressure, hypotension, cold clammy skin, decreased urinary output, and everything which you see in any shock. So milder form DF, then if there is plasma leakage and it is mild, it is DHF. If the plasma leakage is so severe that there are signs of circulatory failure, this is DSS or dengue shock syndrome, which is a medical emergency and should be managed in a bigger tertiary care hospital in an HDU facility. So simple dengue fever will have only two phases, febrile phase and then followed by a recovery or a convalescent phase. But in dengue hemorrhagic fever, which is the severe dengue, there is an intermediate phase of plasma leakage, which is known as the critical phase of the illness, in which the plasma starts seeping out of the vessels and there is circulatory compromise. So identifying this plasma leakage is the main point in management of dengue, and how you identify it, I am sure Memuna will tell you in her subsequent lecture. But if you need any guidance, there are detailed lectures on the YouTube and on social media pages of the expert advisory group where you can learn from. The febrile phase is common to both DF and DHF. It has similar features: high grade, continuous fever, patient has an erythematous appearance, flushed face and extremities, severe body aches and pains. Patients often describe this as the worst fever of their life because body aches and pains, myalgias and arthralgias are very, very severe. There can be a petechial rash on the body. Petechiae are small dot-like hemorrhages which are more visible in the fair-colored people, and there can be a positive tourniquet test. This is the bedside test which you can easily do in your clinic to identify the patients. In this, you inflate the blood pressure cuff to 100 millimeters of mercury for a period of 5 minutes. And then you deflate it, wait for 1 minute, and count the number of petechiae in your anterior cubital fossa, this area, in a 1 square inch or 2.5 centimeters square. If the number of petechiae, which is dot-like hemorrhages, are more than 10, this is an indication that there is capillary leakage or plasma leakage. It gives an indirect evidence of dengue hemorrhagic fever or dengue fever. It is positive in both DF and DHF, but more commonly positive in DHF patients. Patients can have decreased cell count, give you an idea that along with fever, if there is thrombocytopenia and leukopenia, and patients sometimes have a tender liver on palpation, more commonly again in DHF than DF. This is one of the things that you can pick up on clinical examination in your clinic setting. Now, if the patient is of simple dengue fever, then the patient is going to recover after a period of 5 to 7 days, and there will be improvement in the overall condition of the patient, and the patient will come to you and say, Dr. I'm feeling better, my appetite has been regained, and I am less down, I can move about now, I feel hungry, I am gaining interest back in life, my pains are settling, and the counts will start also showing an upward trend, which gives you an idea that patient is going to recovery phase. But there's another important finding which is very, very special about dengue, which is a convalescent or a recovery rash. The rash which forms in the initial part of the illness is a petechial rash. It comes in the febrile phase or with fever. It is petechial rash. It is a non-itchy rash. But in the convalescent or recovery phase, there is appearance of another rash, particularly on your palms and soles, which is an itchy rash. Kharish hoti hai usko bahut zyada. And this itchy rash is very beautifully, poetically described in the books of dermatology. They say that it is a sea of redness with pearls, isles of white pearls. So red erythematous background के ऊपर आपको white spots मिलेंगे, and this is particularly itchy in your palms and soles. So whenever this appears, this is a good sign. And this shows that patient is going into a recovery phase, and you can feel relaxed that now my patient is probably out of it. So now that you know what are the signs and symptoms, what lab tests to offer, comes the point of managing these patients. And the management is no rocket science, it's very simple. There is no specific antiviral available. It's just yesterday that I shared about an antiviral which has been very successful in the clinical trials, and it was published in Nature, which stops the viral replication of dengue. So it is not out in the market. This is the first hand news that I am doing. Only yesterday it was published in Nature, and they are now working on commercial manufacturing and doing its trial in the human population to see if it actually works and if we have a miracle drug for dengue. But at this point in time, there is no specific antiviral drug which acts on this virus and stops its dangerous effects. And the only thing that you can offer the patient is the symptomatic management and maintaining a fluid and electrolyte balance of this patient. So, in the febrile phase, when the patient is having fever, you only give Panadol, paracetamol or acetaminophen. The maximum dose is 4 gram, which is 2 tablets of Panadol 6 hourly. Do not exceed this because it is hepatotoxic and there is frequently liver involvement in dengue fever. Secondly, this paracetamol, most of the patients have very high grade continuous fever, and they say even after taking Panadol, 2 Panadol 6 hourly, they are unable to bring down the fever. So I always tell them that other NSAIDs are not safe for you. So no dicloran, Ponston, Brufen, Faldene, nothing is safe in them, no Nimesulide. Only paracetamol, Panadol, Calpol, Nubrol, these are the drugs which you can prescribe your patients.
Paracetamol should be given 8 hourly or 6 hourly?
The maximum dose is 6 hourly. It really depends on the need of the patient. If the fever is responding to an 8 hourly dosage, stay with the 8 hourly dosage. If still patient becomes febrile, you can increase the frequency to 6 hourly. So this is the maximum dose that you can get. If patient is not febrile, you might not give them.
Can we just start with one tablet 6 hours?
The actual dose is 2 tablets. For adults, it is 2 tablets. So there is no specific diet for dengue. This also I want to emphasize because हम पपीते के पत्ते के रस से और अनार के जूस से और सेब के जूस में नींबू का कतरा डाल के सबसे पहले डेंगू का इलाज करते हैं. So there is no role of these alternative methods to cure dengue because they have no scientific evidence. And the most important of all this is the advice on the warning signs. So if you're sending these patients home because they are very stable, ideally by the instructions of the government, all probable cases or patients with warning signs should be admitted to a hospital for confirmation of dengue. But if the patient is refusing admission or if he's not fulfilling the criteria of a probable case and you want to call them up for a follow-up next day in your clinic, there are certain warning signs that you should always elaborate to your patients because they're very, very crucial. Because sometimes the patient goes home all set, you say it's fever and there are mildly disturbed counts, you can go home, rest, take Panadol, and the next day you come to know that he landed in emergency in a state of shock and you could not save the life of the patient. So it is very important to know these warning signs, and the most important warning sign is the sign which we ignore the most. This I am telling you from my clinical experience. I have seen thousands of dengue patients in Pakistan and many patients abroad as well. The सबसे common symptom में मरीज आके कहता है कि डॉक्टर साहब बुखार उतर गया है लेकिन तबीयत नहीं बेहतर, बहुत बेचैनी है, घबराहट है, मैं खड़ा होता हूँ मुझे आंखों के आगे अंधेरा आता है, चक्कर आता है, दिल डूबने लग जाता है, हाथ पांव ठंडे हो जाते हैं. This is the time, and usually our response, because we are seeing so a lot of patients, we say कोई बात नहीं, बुखार के बाद कमजोरी हो जाती है, आप खाएं पिएं, आप अपना हाइड्रेशन इंप्रूव करें, डाइट अच्छी लें, रेस्ट करें, इंशाल्लाह सेटल हो जाएगा. In a dengue patient, if any patient comes to you and says कि डॉक्टर साहब कल से बुखार तो नहीं हो रहा या बुखार हल्का हो गया लेकिन तबीयत नहीं ठीक है, admit that patient. This is the patient which is in pre-shock and the body's compensatory mechanisms are keeping him active and up and about. But at one point in time, these compensatory mechanisms will fail and the patient will go into a decompensated phase of shock and land in an emergency with a feeble pulse or unrecordable blood pressure. And that is the very, very late time. Once the patient goes into shock, it is very difficult to get him out of the shock with resuscitation and save the organs of the patient. So the earlier you pick up that the patient is leaking with the help of these warning signs, you prevent shock. And preventing the shock is the mainstay of treatment. So if patient says that there is no clinical improvement despite defervescence, which is settling of fever, if patient complains of persistent vomiting, unable to take orally, severe abdominal pain, right hypochondrium tenderness, bleeding from any side, blackouts on standing up, which is showing postural drop in the blood pressure, narrowing of pulse pressure, cold extremities, pale looking patient, pale face, cold hands, complaints of decreased urinary output, these are all pre-shock signs, and these patients should be managed in an in-hospital setting. So by now I'm sure everybody now knows the difference between DF and DHF. So DF, there is no intermediate critical phase, but in DHF patients there is a phase of plasma leakage in which the patients can, if unnoticed and untreated, can go into shock. So identification of this plasma leakage is very important, and this is what saves the life of the patient. So for the family physicians sitting over here, my first message for today's talk is, number one, keep your index of suspicion high in this season. If a patient comes to you with fever without a focus of infection, fever without a focus of infection, if patient is saying that I have dysuria for 3 days, or if the patient is saying that he has a swollen joint and red, obviously you think of infection, or if the patient is saying that I have bad cough and sputum production, you think of chest infection. But if there is a fever without focus, and the skull counts are on the declining side, or sometimes they are normal. So you never rule out dengue on a normal CBC. So you repeat the CBC after 24 hours and see the trend. On first 2 days of the illness, usually there are normal counts, but after day 3 onwards, there is a declining trend in the patients. So WBC less than 4,000 and thrombocytopenia either less than 100,000 or a falling trend in the platelet count of more than 20,000 in a 24 hours period is a significant finding. You order these patients the confirmatory test for dengue, and if there are any warning signs, immediately refer to a hospital, but after stabilizing the patients. Do not just refer them pulseless or beatless. Give some IV fluid, not too much. Give 500 ml normal saline, try to stabilize the patient, accompany the patient to the hospital, nearest healthcare facility where emergency measures are available and a well-trained doctor can take care of them. All the public sector hospitals and most of the private sector hospitals are well equipped with a dengue setup. We set up dengue expert advisory group based counters in the emergency room to cater the needs of this patient under one roof. We've also developed wards and HPUs, and the guidelines are in place which are being implemented by both the departments, primary and secondary healthcare and specialized healthcare, to facilitate the people of Pakistan, particularly in Punjab. So please make use of this facility and refer these patients for early management, because this is life-saving. This is a dengue reporting app which we have on Android. I know you are very busy, 100 times more busy than us. If we see 20 patients, we see 100 patients in a day. And it is very difficult to enter this data, but still, from the forum of Pakistan Academy of Family Physicians, I would like to inform you that this is an app which is a phone-based app in which you can report the patient. We have also provided a WhatsApp number on which you can just message the particular details and the confirmatory diagnosis of the patient and their home address, so a team can go there and do a case response. Reporting is very important, because if you report a case, then the system which is in place by the government, it comes into action. The whole government machinery becomes active, it goes to the house and the workplace of that particular person which is being reported as a dengue patient. They do surveillance activities, they do the cleanliness activities, they do a case response by doing an IRS, and they screen other people around them to see that that area doesn't become a hot spot of the disease and you can manage this disease easily. So please note down this telephone number. I've been circulating it on different forums as well. I'm propagating it in the media, in the social media as well, so that everybody, being a responsible citizen, should report a patient of dengue, because reporting helps the community at large. Criteria for admission. Any patients with warning sign, probable patients, pregnant females. I see a lot of female physicians over here. I'm sure they come across many women health issues. So pregnancy is one indication in which no matter what is the stage of pregnancy, what is the trimester of pregnancy, and what is the phase of illness, you should always refer these patients to a hospital. Just lost a 31 years old pregnant female due to dengue fever as well. So it is very important to admit these patients and monitor these patients. Elderly patients and infants, they are more prone to develop DHF and complications, so they should be admitted. Obese have a poorer prognosis in dengue. Results and studies have shown that obesity is a risk factor for DHF. Please admit these patients. Patients on comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, ischemic heart disease, patients on immunosuppressant drugs, patient of transplant, renal transplant, liver transplant. If they are suffering from dengue, they should never be managed at home, but in a hospital setting. People are sometimes taking antiplatelet therapy, anti-ischemic therapy, antihypertensive, oral hypoglycemics, insulin. The readings become erratic during acute infections, so they need an in-hospital care for managing them adequately. So just to summarize what we have learned today, first you need to know whether it is dengue or not. And this will be by suspicion criteria, which I will. Clinical criteria. Then you see for the counts by looking at CBC, leukopenia and thrombocytopenia. Then you find out whether patient is of DF or DHF. And the plasma leakage you can identify either by rising hematocrit of the patient, because when it loses plasma, the hematocrit starts rising, or by doing an ultrasound. Many of you do a preliminary ultrasound or a basic ultrasound in your clinics, I know. So just learn how to do an ultrasound of a gallbladder, which shows a thickened wall and you can easily identify it. Similarly, there can be free fluid in the pleural or peritoneal cavity, which can be picked up on ultrasound, and this shows that patient is in leaky phase, and you should refer these patients to an in-hospital management. If the patient is in leaky phase, when did he go into the leaky phase? Because this critical phase of plasma leakage only remains for 48 hours. This is the beauty of this disease. ये बहुत लंबा आपको प्रॉब्लम नहीं करता. 48 आवर्स के अंदर यूजुअली जो आपका TNF और ल्यूकेन्स वगैरह हैं ये बर्न आउट हो जाते हैं, इनकी हाफ लाइफ खत्म हो जाती है, तो द बॉडी स्टार्ट्स गोइंग बैक इनटू द रिकवरी मोड एंड द रीअब्जॉर्प्शन ऑफ द फ्लूइड स्टार्ट्स. So stabilize and refer these patients if you think you are incapable of handling them in outpatient setting. In the inpatient setting, you will need to have a strict fluid regime. कुछ do's and don'ts हैं dengue के जो मैं आपके साथ शेयर करूँगी, वो भी मैं आपसे बात शेयर करूँगी. So the do's में ये है कि stabilize और refer करना है. Don'ts में ये है कि बहुत ज़्यादा fluid नहीं लेना. डेंगी में ज़्यादा फ्लूइड ज़्यादा नुकसानदेह हो जाता है. कम फ्लूइड उतना नुकसानदेह नहीं होता, वो भी नुकसानदेह है, पर उतना नुकसानदेह नहीं होता जितना फ्लूइड ओवरलोड नुकसानदेह होता है. So it is a very careful balance between shock and fluid overload, and you have to practice the smoothest and the most uneventful way of recovering these patients by giving fluids. And fluids are given in different forms, different types के fluids हैं, different rates पे देते हैं हम. उनकी details आपको डॉक्टर अमृता शायद बताएंगे. So what you need to monitor in these patients is clinically hematocrit, urine output, and the vitals are recorded on a specified design chart. I'm skipping the fluid management part. I'm not going into the details. I'm just telling you that these life-size posters are available with Dengue Expert Advisory Group. Shahid Maksi Saab, who's the director CDC, is also over here. He represents the DG office, which provides logistic support to everything that DI does. So ये जो फॉर्म्स हैं, अगर आपको अपने किसी छोटा अस्पताल आप ओन करते हैं जिसमें आप पेशेंट्स मैनेज करते हैं, तो उसमें आप लगा सकते हैं फॉर द हेल्प ऑफ द ड्यूटी डॉक्टर्स. इट इज़ अ कलर कोडेड फॉर्म. It has been put a lot of effort in developing these forms, and they are appreciated all over the world. We had an international conference on dengue in March 2020 where specialists from 8 different countries, dengue experts, came, and they were all praised for the efforts of Pakistan government, particularly the Dengue Expert Advisory Group, for developing such detailed and comprehensive documents for the guidance of doctors and paramedical staff. So these are color coded. The blue is for crystalloid, pink is for investigations, yellow is for colloid, red is for blood. So you can easily follow this algorithm for treating your patients. Okay, सिर्फ एक बात प्लेटलेट ट्रांसफ्यूजन, क्योंकि आपसे बहुत ज़्यादा मरीज कहेंगे डॉक्टर साहब प्लेटलेट 25,000 हो गए हैं, डॉक्टर साहब 10,000 हो गए हैं, डॉक्टर साहब प्लेटलेट नहीं लगाएंगे तो क्या होगा, एंड देन दे स्टार्ट कहेंगे ये डॉक्टर तो लगाता नहीं, किसी और डॉक्टर को दिखाते हैं, तो बहुत डेंजरस है। इर्द गिर्द के लोग भी बहुत बात करते हैं। सो हमारी एजम्पशन ये होती है कि क्योंकि प्लेटलेट काउंट डिक्रीज है तो हाई रिस्क ऑफ ब्लीडिंग है, विच इज़ पार्टली ट्रू। ब्लीडिंग का रिस्क तो होता है प्लेटलेट काउंट कम से। देन अगर हम प्लेटलेट काउंट को इंक्रीज कर देंगे तो ब्लीडिंग नहीं होगी, ये भी हमारी एजम्पशन होती है। और तीसरा ये कि रिस्क ऑफ ब्लीडिंग को कम कर दें। नाउ एवरीथिंग हैज़ टू बी tested with scientific evidence, and the scientific evidence shows that there is no role of prophylactic platelet transfusion. If patient is not bleeding, no matter what is the platelet count, you do not transfuse this patient's platelets. If patient is bleeding, तो खून ज़ाया हो रहा है, और मैं हमेशा कहती हूँ खून का बदला खून होता है। So if patient is bleeding, he is not only bleeding platelets, he is bleeding whole blood. So blood लगाइए patient। अगर blood देने के बावजूद आपने 2 points of blood दिए हैं और फिर भी patient का platelet count less than 10,000 and patient is still bleeding, then comes the role of mega units of platelet which you can transfuse, or if you have to do an intervention in any patient, emergency C-section करना पड़ रहा है, पेशेंट का डायलिसिस करना पड़ रहा है, क्योंकि रीनल फेलियर में चला गया, आपने डबल ह्यूमन कैथेटर पास करना है। दीज आर द इंडिकेशन जिसमें हम मेगा यूनिट दे के थोड़ा सा बिल्डअप करते हैं प्लेटलेट को, ताकि पेशेंट मेजर जगह वेसल से ब्लीड ना करे, यू कैन सेफली बाय टाइम। दीज प्लेटलेट डिक्लाइन इन द प्लेटलेट काउंट इज ट्रांजिटरी, ट्रांजिशनल होता है, ये बढ़ जाते हैं खुद ब खुद, फिर हमारा सारा क्रेडिट पपीते के पत्ते के अरग और सेब के जूस और नींबू के रगड़े हो जाता है। हालांकि अगर आप नहीं भी देंगे तो उसने नॉर्मली हफ्ता 10 दिन के अंदर वापस आ जाना है। आई ऑलवेज टेल दिस स्टोरी, जो लोगों को लगता है कि शायद पता नहीं सच्ची है कि नहीं, बट आई हैव ट्रीटेड अ पेशेंट, प्रेग्नेंट फीमेल विद अ 0 platelet count without platelet transfusion, and she gave birth to a normal baby because we waited and tried to manage her to delay the labor till she gets out. So never induce, एक message females के, never induce a labor in patient who is in DHM. Try to buy some time of 2 to 3 days, 48 hours की बात होती है पेशेंट उसमें। अगर इमरजेंसी है, अगर IUDR हो रहा है, अगर पेशेंट की कोई ऐसी ऑब्स्ट्रक्टिकल इमरजेंसी हो गई है कि आपको पेशेंट को डिलीवर करना पड़ रहा है, then you transfuse platelets and then do a C-section. Preferred route is still vaginal delivery, not C-section in these patients.
I don't know till what lower level we should wait for the platelets, because they are falling down.
मैंने आपको बताया अभी 0. नो रोल ऑफ प्रोफाइलेक्टिक प्लेटलेट। अगर ब्लीड नहीं कर रहा कोई भी लेवल है, आपने ब्लड ट्रांसफ्यूजन, प्लेटलेट ट्रांसफ्यूजन नहीं देनी, इट विल कम ऑन इट्स ओन। इफ पेशेंट इज ब्लीडिंग, देन गिव ब्लड टू द पेशेंट। इफ डिस्पाइट गिविंग 2 points of blood, platelets are less than 10,000, then you can give a mega unit. Okay, I hope everybody is clear on this one. So the scientific evidence shows that most of the patients can be managed by crystalloid, which is normal saline. Try to give normal saline to this patient, not ringer lactate or dextrose saline. Colloids, which are Dextron 40, which are special fluids which are not available in the market. In hospital setting, it is only available. They are sometimes given in dengue shock patients, and blood transfusion is given and is required in about 10 to 15% patients, because these are the patients who are bleeding. And you need to understand that patients are not bleeding entirely due to thrombocytopenia. Thrombocytopenia is one factor which can contribute to bleeding. The main cause of bleeding is ischemia. Ischemia of the organs. Gut को blood नहीं जा रहा है, ischemic necrosis हो रहा है, bleed करना शुरू होता है। ठीक है? So ischemia mainly जो life threatening bleeds होते हैं, जिसमें hematemesis melena हो रहा होता है पेशेंट को, या multi organ multi site से bleeding हो रही होती है, that is usually because patient is in shock. जो thrombocytopenia की वजह से bleed होती है, वो होती भी mildly है, जैसे gum bleed हो गई, skin पे bruising बढ़ गई, nose bleed हो गई, which is not difficult to manage most of the times. But ये सारी चीज़ें हमने अस्पताल में पेश की हैं. Please do not try to treat them in outpatient setting. मिथ्स एंड फैक्ट्स मैंने आप सबको बता दिए हैं, पपीते के पत्ते के अर्क और जूस की स्टोरी भी मैंने आपको सुना दिया है. द मैसेज दैट आई वांट टू गिव एंड एंड माय टॉक. वी ऑल नो दैट हमारी पॉपुलेशन बहुत ज़्यादा है. डेंगू बहुत इज़ द फास्टेस्ट ग्रोइंग infectious tropical disease. Mosquitoes are the #1 killers in the animals of the world. They kill more than any other lion or gorilla or snake bite or even humans. So they are the #1 killer, mosquitoes. And mosquitoes में जो सबसे fastest growing disease है वो dengue. So prevention, prevention, and prevention. This is the message for today. Make sure your children are properly covered when they go to school. Exposed areas के ऊपर mosquito repellents का इस्तेमाल करें. घरों की जालियाँ अगर टूटी हुई हैं उनको ठीक करा लीजिए और मच्छरदानी का इस्तेमाल करें. घर में ब्लीडिंग स्पॉट्स को आइडेंटिफाई करें और उनको एलिमिनेट करें. प्रॉपरली डिस्पोज ऑफ करें गार्बेज को, पुराने टायर्स को. बर्तनों में परिंदों के पीने के लिए इस मौसम में पानी ना रखें. अगर रखें तो हर दूसरे दिन उसको तब्दील करते हैं. और these are small things which we look after in our house and in our surrounding. We can help and be a responsible citizen and limit spread of the disease. Take use of the gadgets that we have now, like mosquito cats, mats, rackets, electric rackets which kill the mosquitoes, because they help in controlling the mosquitoes. And about the vaccine, I'm not going into the detail of the vaccine. I just gave a talk at Health Services Academy Islamabad, which was the first dengue vaccine talk in Pakistan that I gave last week. And there are some good news in the pipeline, but for the time being there is no approved efficacious vaccine for the use against dengue in our part of the world. It is approved in 20 countries, but very limited indications are there for this dengue vaccine. And the main message that I want to give is communication and public awareness, and today's activity is one of them, where we communicate with our fellow physicians to disseminate this knowledge. And you should have smaller setup of workshops for your family physician friends as well, where they do learn about different case scenarios, interactive discussions on how to manage and how to protect any patient. Please pass on this information to people around you, because they seek your opinion as opinion leaders in the community. Indulge yourself in healthy activities to create awareness about this disease, and the more we talk about it, the more we make people aware, the sooner we will be able to control it. So I will end my talk with the message that this is our life and this is our fight, and the fight is against the bite of the mosquito. So we have to make sure that we play our part in this fight. As a physician, as a practicing doctors, we should spread not only the message of awareness, but should do everything possible to help the government in fighting this epidemic. I am sure that if all of us do a collective effort and we continue to do such activities, then we will be able to fight off this disease. This is the design of counters that I am referring to. You will be seeing videos on different channels, social medias about this facility, which is available in most of the hospitals, all the public sector and major private sector hospitals of the country. We have developed guidelines. The guidelines in pregnancy are in the printing phase. They will be out soon. And I am so thankful to all my teachers from all across the world who have made it possible for me to talk about dengue in front of such a great audience today. Thank you very much. Please, if you need any help, we have our website, gyan.punjab.gov.pk. All the lectures, all the documents, forms, guidelines, notifications of government, rules and regulations, SOPs are available in the downloadable form on the website. We are present on Twitter, Insta and Facebook. Follow us for informative videos, for informative messages and the notifications of the government which we regularly display. Thank you very much for being a wonderful audience. It was a pleasure talking to all of you.
You are recommending mosquito repellent for the prevention from bite. How much resistance is there against these repellents?
There was a study carried out in 2017 which did not show any resistance. पर methylene जो इसके अंदर होती है mosquito repellents के अंदर, if they are applied every 6 hourly, they are effective. But if you wash your hands, you do a wuzu or you do a swimming, then you have to reapply that. Their efficacy is for only 6 to 8 hours, and after that you need to reapply that. Remember, these are contact poisons. So only if the mosquito comes in contact with them, then it prevents the bite. So please apply it generously over all the exposed areas of the body. Any other questions?
Yes, once the patient has recovered, does he or she develops any immunity?
Yes. The immunity in dengue is of two types. The lifelong immunity is serotype specific. So if you are infected with DEN2 virus, then the antibodies against DEN2 are produced and you are immune from DEN2 for the rest of your life. But there are three other serotypes as well, 1, 3 and 4. And if you get bitten by a mosquito which has either of these 1, 3 or 4, then you can again develop disease. A short-term immunity is produced against all 4 serotypes once you have dengue. So it is very unlikely कि आपको हर 3 महीने के बाद dengue हो जाए. So usually short-term immunity चारों serotypes के खिलाफ रहती है, लेकिन lifelong उसके बाद immunity नहीं होता है. लेकिन lifelong immunity is only serospecific.
And what about the vaccination of all this?
Vaccination?
Okay,
वैक्सीनेशन मैंने इसलिए डिटेल में नहीं बताई क्योंकि एक तो पाकिस्तान में रजिस्टर्ड और अवेलेबल नहीं है. वैक्सीनेशन का इशू ये है कि सनोफी की तरफ से डेक्सिया के नाम से वैक्सीन लॉन्च की गई है. इनिशियली 2 countries थी, ब्राज़ील एंड फिलीपींस, which started this vaccination program in their school children. But in the subsequent years, they had increased hospitalization and severe dengue in the vaccinated children, and it became a chaos and headline. Sanofi then changed its position paper and WHO said that there is conditional approval of the vaccine. And now it is only approved in patients who have already been infected with dengue once. So you need to check if there is seroprevalence data is available, or you check for their presence of IgG antibodies before injecting the vaccine, which is a very cumbersome process because you test everybody and then you give vaccine. It's very costly. Now there are 2 other vaccines which are in the pipeline. One is by Takeda and the other one is by NIH USA. They have published their phase 3 clinical trials and they are very promising. So we are expecting the light at the end of the tunnel very soon.
dengue में पोस्ट वायरल इन्फेक्शन मायोकार्डाइटिस का कोई इंसिडेंस है, जैसे चिकन पॉक्स में कुछ केसेस में, एंड जब पैंडेमिक होता है.
आई एम वेरी ग्लैड कि बड़े अच्छे सवाल आए. डेंगी इज अ मल्टी सिस्टम इन्वॉल्वमेंट. इट कैन लाइक कोविड, हम हर चीज़ को आजकल कोविड से रिलेट करते हैं. आपको पता है कि वो वेसल्स को भी प्रॉब्लम करता है, हार्ट पे भी प्रॉब्लम करता है. सो डेंगी कैन इन्वॉल्व योर ऑर्गन्स एज वेल. Liver is the one which is most commonly involved, causing acute transaminitis or hepatitis करता है. But there is one form of dengue which is known as expanded dengue syndrome. Expanded dengue syndrome is the one in which there is an isolated organ involvement or unusual presentation of dengue, like dengue encephalitis. I've just seen 2 cases of dengue encephalitis in Karachi this month. Then dengue myocarditis. It is very common. We've seen cases of transverse myelitis secondary to dengue, GB syndrome secondary to dengue, acute hepatitis, acute renal failure secondary to dengue. So skin की कुछ manifestations हैं जो dengue के साथ आ जाती हैं. So there's a vast variety of organ involvement which is reported with dengue, but they are not very common. They are unusual presentations of dengue. The usual presentation is of hybrid fever with no long-term sequelae of this disease.
Thank you very much.